I read an article in the newspaper and it said, if you spend 10 minutes in the woods, something will happen. You'll see something interesting. And what you've got to do is just sit quiet and something will happen. Now, hopefully, that won't be a wild boar with children coming to gore me to death. But this spot I chose, I'm up on top of the mountain now. I'm about 550 metres high, and right at the top it thins out the forest quite a lot, and they've cut a lot of trees down up here. But I thought I'd sit here because I've got a kind of a view onto some mountains over there, and it's nice and warm and sunny, and it's relatively quiet, apart from the fact that in that direction, about 5 miles away, there's a glider club, and every 20 minutes one of the planes comes flying over here and pulls one of the gliders up, because it's perfect gliding weather today. Blue sky and sunny, a good 20 degrees, which is not bad for February. Today's the warmest day we've had this winter. We'll try that experiment out, just sitting here for 10 minutes and see what happens. Maybe the interesting things that they were talking about that happen in the forest, it's not actually in the forest itself, but in your head, in your cortex, in that tree in your head, the brain. Because you start to feel at one with the forest. I remember when I was a little boy, I used to often go for walks in the forest with my dad. Must have been 6, 7 years old, in the park near where we lived. And we would be walking along, and he'd say to me, these stones on the floor, they're all alive. And he's go, yeah, Dad, sure, of course they're alive. He says, yeah, they are. They're really alive. And I've often thought back to that throughout my life. And I've come to the conclusion that he was right. The stones are alive, but they're living really slowly. And if you think about what are we made of, we're made of, according to the Bible, it's clay and water, isn't it? And stones are compacted clay. So we're made out of stones as well. We're made out of the earth, and because we are high percentage of us are water, moving about fast because all the molecules are free to move about. But a stone is solid and crystallised and doesn't move about so much, but it does slowly. Maybe it'll get moved by an earthquake or as the mountain rises up, and perhaps eventually it will be ground down by the weather, eroded into dust, and the dust mixes with water, and that becomes the clay which makes all living beings. So my dad was right about the stones being alive, but they're just on a certain other level of evolution. And it's not only stones, it's like these trees here, they're also made out of stones, they're also made out of the earth's intrinsic ingredient, you know, the silicon, what is it, silicon? The rock of the earth. They're also made of a rock of the earth mixed with water, cooked up by the sun and DNA, and like us, they're alive, but living much more slowly, more on a level with the stones. And then, so you begin to sit here, and the border, the frontier between you as a person and this area around you disappears. And you realise you are part of it all. You're no different to it all. And I think that's what the magic 10 minutes is when you sit here and realise that you are just as much a part of the forest here as the trees and the rocks and the branches and the ferns and the mushrooms. And it makes you feel not so alone, because you're part of the system, and it's only our strange little egos and coping mechanisms that make us feel apart from the forest or the rocks or the mountains or the land or the sea. Our little egos, our little games that we have to play to produce that food for ourselves, and our intelligence, which maybe trips us up sometimes. That gets put to one side for a second in that 10 minutes of silence in the forest. And you realise you're like a dwarf or a troll. You're made from the same materials. And then it goes on and on and on, because these kind of avenues of thought, they don't stop. You look up at that sun that's blinding down on us, and that's the next level up from the stones. That's where did all the stones come from? It was all a big cinder, wasn't it, that came flying out of the sun one day. Dust compacted together from the sun. Oh, we're all going around the sun, and that's where we all came from. And once again, we're given a little feeling of brotherhood, at oneness with the world. And perhaps people gravitate to churches. Because if you look at those trees there, going up towards heaven, they're not too dissimilar to the beams going up inside a cathedral, inside the Gothic cathedral, holding the roof up. So there's the secret of the sit 10 minutes quietly in the woods, and interesting things will happen. Probably some guy on a quad bike now come flying past and beat the shit out of me. But that's part of it as well, isn't it? I always get hawks in the woods.